Get that sick old woman out of my house." Those 6 words hissed through a bedroom wall at midnight cost my son and his wife $12 million. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. The day I discovered I was dying. Well, not dying exactly, but sick enough to find out who really loved me and who just loved what they thought I could give them. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Now back to my story. The diagnosis folder sat on my passenger seat like a ticking bomb wrapped in manila paper. Moderate heart failure, the doctor had said, his voice steady and clinical, as if he was discussing the weather and not the fault lines running through my 63-year-old heart. 15 to 20 years with proper management. Not a death sentence, he'd assured me. A manageable condition. I kept my hand steady on the wheel as I merged onto the crosstown expressway, heading toward my son's house in South Tampa. The house I'd helped purchase with $50,000 they thought was a gift. I should have felt grateful for those extra years the doctor promised me. Instead, I felt something colder settle in my chest. Tonight would be the real test, not of my heart, but of theirs. 3 years I'd lived with my son Ephraim and his wife Claire. 3 years of playing the downsized retiree, the mother who'd cashed out her small property management business and simplified her life. Every month, I handed Ephraim $3,000 in cash. My contribution to household expenses, I called it. They accepted it like rent from a tenant, which I suppose I was, the grateful guest. The aging mother taking up space in their converted home office, sleeping in a room barely large enough for my bed and dresser. I'd made myself small, invisible, manageable. All part of the test they didn't know they were taking. I pulled into the driveway beside Claire's white SUV. The house looked perfect in the fading March light, all craftsman charm and expensive landscaping. My $50,000 had made this possible, though they'd never know the full scope of what I could have done for them. What I still could do, if they proved worthy of it. That was the question, wasn't it? Worthy. I'd spent 3 years trying to answer it, watching, measuring, taking notes on every interaction like a scientist studying specimens under glass. Inside, my granddaughter Sophia was setting the table with the precision of a miniature adult, 8 years old with her mother's sharp eyes and calculating expression. My youngest granddaughter, Emma, 6 years old and still soft around the edges, crashed toy horses across the living room floor. "Grandma!" Emma launched herself at my legs, and I caught her, feeling that familiar ache in my lower back. "Easy there, wild thing," I said, ruffling her hair. "Where's your father?" "Office," Sophia answered without looking up from arranging forks with geometric precision. Already learning efficiency from her mother, already being shaped into something hard and practical. Ephraim emerged wearing his weekend casual, expensive polo, designer jeans that probably cost more than my first car. At 38, he'd inherited my build but none of my hunger. Marketing consultant, whatever that meant. Made decent money, spent more, always spent more. "Hey, Mom," he said, his eyes flicking to the folder in my hand. "How was the appointment?" I held it up like evidence. "Got the results." His expression flickered. Concern, maybe, or just polite interest. Hard to tell lately. "Let's talk after dinner," I said, and watched his shoulders relax with relief. Of course, nothing heavy before the meal, nothing to disturb the carefully curated peace of their evening routine. Claire appeared from the kitchen, blonde hair pulled back tight, yoga clothes that probably cost $200. At 36, she maintained herself with the dedication of someone terrified of becoming irrelevant. She glanced at the folder, then at me, then away, quick as a bird spotting a predator. "Dinner's ready," she announced to the room, not to me specifically. "Kids, wash your hands." We sat. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, quinoa. Claire's cooking was competent and joyless. Every meal calibrated for health and aesthetics, like her Instagram feed. Nothing too rich, nothing too indulgent, nothing that might add an extra pound to her carefully maintained frame. I watched them settle into their seats. watched the family tableau arrange itself around the table, and felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture. This was my family. These were my people, but I'd never felt more like an outsider. "So," Ephraim said, cutting his chicken into identical pieces with surgical precision. "The doctor?" I'd rehearsed this, calm delivery, watch their faces, measure their reactions like a jeweler weighing diamonds. "Heart failure," I said, letting the words land heavy in the middle of their perfect meal. "Moderate stage." I watched Claire's fork pause halfway to her mouth, watched Ephraim's hand tighten on his knife. Sounds frightening, but it's manageable with medication and lifestyle changes. The cardiologist was actually optimistic. 15 to 20 years with proper care. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds. I counted. Then Claire's eyes darted to Ephraim, just for a heartbeat, a glance I wasn't supposed to notice. But I'd been noticing everything for 3 years. Every look, every sigh, every moment of tolerance wearing thin. "That's concerning, Margaret," she said, her voice carrying the exact pitch of someone discussing a broken appliance. "You'll need to be careful." "Yeah, Mom, that's tough," Ephraim added, reaching for his water glass like it was a life raft. "Make sure you follow the doctor's orders." Words without warmth, perfunctory sympathy, like commenting on someone's bad traffic experience. I could have been telling them about a delayed flight for all the emotion in their voices. "Are you going to be okay, Grandma?" Sophia asked, and for a moment I saw genuine concern in her young face, still innocent enough to care without calculation. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I smiled at her, keeping my voice steady. "Just means I need to take better care of myself." I turned back to my chicken, waiting for the follow-up questions that should have come. Questions about treatment, about what I needed, about how they could help. Instead, Claire pivoted with the grace of a politician changing uncomfortable subjects. "Ephraim, did you finish the Henderson proposal?" Just like that. My health, my diagnosis, my mortality dismissed as quickly as yesterday's weather. Ephraim launched into work details and Claire nodded along, asking questions, engaging fully in a way she hadn't engaged with my news. I ate my chicken and memorized the moment, filing it away with all the other moments I'd collected over 3 years. Evidence, data, proof. After dinner, I excused myself to my room. The converted home office, the smallest space in the house, barely fit for a guest, certainly not fit for the woman who'd helped make this house possible. I opened my top drawer where 12 identical envelopes sat in a row, one for each month of the year. I'd prepared this month's 3 days ago, 30 crisp $100 bills, arranged with care. Back in the dining room, Ephraim was loading the dishwasher with the methodical movements of someone completing a chore. I handed him the envelope. "This month's contribution." He took it without looking inside, without counting it, without even meeting my eyes. "Thanks, Mom." Not even pretending to be grateful anymore. Just automatic acceptance, muscle memory of entitlement. I'd raised him to say thank you, to show appreciation, to understand that money represented work and sacrifice and value. Somewhere along the way, those lessons had been lost. Or maybe they'd never really taken root at all. Maybe I'd just been fooling myself for 38 years. Claire watched from the kitchen doorway, her gaze following the envelope into Ephraim's hand before she turned away. I retreated to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and listened. The walls here were thin. Builder grade, cheap construction dressed up with expensive finishes. I heard them moving around, putting the kids to bed, their evening routine playing out like a script they'd performed 1,000 times. Then their bedroom door closed and I heard voices. Not words yet, just tones rising and falling like waves, building toward shore. The volume increased. Something pulled me into the hallway, some instinct that this mattered, that I needed to hear whatever came next, that the test I'd been administering for 3 years was about to yield its final results. I opened my door quietly, stepped into the dim corridor, and moved toward their bedroom like a ghost haunting my own life. Down the hall, yellow light leaked under their door. The voices grew sharper, more distinct, cutting through the walls like knives through paper. "We need to talk about your mother," Claire's voice, crystalline and cold. I stood frozen, my hand still gripping my doorknob behind me, my heart, my failing, moderate stage heart, hammering against my ribs. The words hung in the air like a blade poised above my neck, and I knew, I absolutely knew, that whatever came next would change everything. "Jenny, keep your voice down," Ephraim said, using the nickname that made Claire sound softer than she was. The kids will be fine." Claire's voice cut through his protest like scissors through silk. "I'm done, Ephraim. I'm completely done." Each word landed with the weight of a judge's gavel. "Get that sick old woman out of my house. I don't want her around my children with these diseases. She's dragging us down. Can't you see that?" The world tilted. Those words, sick old woman, my house, dragging us down, hit like physical blows, each one finding a soft place to land and burrow deep. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, suddenly needing its support, my legs gone weak beneath me. "Jenny, she's my mother," Ephraim's voice barely audible, weak as water. "Where's she supposed to go?" "I don't care." The contempt in Claire's voice couldn't be faked, couldn't be exaggerated. This was her truth, finally surfacing after 3 years of yoga smiles and careful politeness. A nursing home, an apartment, anywhere but here. We gave her a place when she needed it. Now she needs to figure out her own situation, especially now with her heart problems. What if she dies here, Ephraim? What if the kids find her? Did you think about that? I hadn't thought about that. Hadn't considered that my death would be an inconvenience to them, a trauma to manage, a problem to solve. In that moment, standing in the dark hallway of a house I'd helped them buy, I saw myself through Claire's eyes, a burden, a liability, a sick old woman taking up space and air and resources that could be better used elsewhere. "She pays $3,000 a month," Ephraim tried, his voice carrying no real conviction. Negotiating from a position of weakness, the way he'd negotiated everything his entire life. 3,000, Claire's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. "This house costs us $5,000 monthly in mortgage alone, not counting utilities, food, everything else. She's barely covering half her burden. And now she's sick? No, absolutely not. I want her out." I waited for my son to defend me, to show some backbone, to channel the boy I'd raised to stand up for what was right, to protect the people he loved. I taught him that, hadn't I? Taught him loyalty and honor and family values, hadn't I? Where am I supposed to tell her to go? "Tell her anything," Claire said, her voice dropping to something colder than anger. "Tell her we need space. Tell her it's better for her health to have her own place. I don't care what you say. Just get her out. 1 week, Ephraim. I want her gone in 1 week." The silence that followed felt like the space between lightning and thunder. I waited for the boom, for Ephraim to explode with righteous anger, to tell his wife she was wrong, cruel, heartless. Instead, his voice came out small and defeated. "Okay, 1 word, 2 syllables. Complete capitulation." "Okay, I'll tell her tomorrow. Just stop yelling." I stepped backward into my room on legs that didn't feel like mine, closed the door with careful silence, and stood in complete darkness. I didn't turn on the light, didn't move to the bed, just stood there absorbing the full weight of what I'd heard. 3 years ago, Ephraim had called me, his voice tight with stress. "Mom, Claire and I found this amazing house, but we're short on the down payment." I'd written the check for $50,000 the next day, handed it over with a hug and tears of joy from both of them. Thank you. This means everything." 3 years. 3 years of monthly cash, of making myself smaller, of testing whether their gratitude was real or rehearsed, of wondering if they loved me or just tolerated me. Now I had my answer, delivered in Claire's contemptuous voice through a thin wall. "Sick old woman. My house. Dragging us down." I moved to my closet on autopilot, pushed aside hanging shirts, and found the small lockbox on the top shelf. Inside were private banking statements I'd kept hidden for 3 years, documents I looked at sometimes late at night when the weight of playing poor became too heavy. The most recent statement showed a balance of $12,347,612, give or take the interest that accumulated daily while I slept in this converted office and pretended to be broke. They thought I'd lost everything when I sold my business 5 years ago. Thought I'd downsized from necessity rather than choice. They had no idea what I'd actually sold Walker Commercial Properties for. What I'd carefully invested, what I'd deliberately hidden while playing the role of modest retiree who needed their help, their charity, their $3,000 discount on true market rent. I sat on my bed in complete darkness and didn't sleep. Memories flooded in like water through a broken dam. Paying for Euphrem's college, $180,000 over 4 years. The investment property I'd helped him buy in his 20s, then helped him sell when he mismanaged it into the ground. The car, the wedding, the endless assists and bailouts and supports that apparently built nothing but expectation. Nothing but the assumption that Mom would always be there with her checkbook open and her standards low. When light finally crept under my door, I'd processed the betrayal into something harder, clearer, more useful than rage. I heard movement in the kitchen, breakfast sounds, the coffee maker gurgling, cabinet doors opening and closing. I dressed carefully, splashed cold water on my face, and emerged to find Euphrem making coffee with exaggerated concentration, his back to me, his shoulders tense. "Morning, Mom," he said, without turning around. "Morning." We stood in uncomfortable silence. Claire swept through like a cold front, grabbed her phone off the counter and disappeared again without acknowledging my presence. The kids were still asleep, just the 3 of us in this kitchen, this awkward, terrible silence heavy as fog. Euphrem cleared his throat. "Mom, I've been thinking." The rehearsed quality of his voice made my skin crawl. "Maybe it would be better, for everyone, if you found your own place, your own space, for your health. It'd be less stress, more independence." He paused, still not meeting my eyes. "We'll give you a week to, make arrangements." Every word rehearsed but delivered poorly, like an actor who hadn't quite memorized his lines. He stared at his coffee mug like it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw clearly what he'd become. A man shaped by the path of least resistance. A man married to a woman who'd consumed whatever backbone he might have once possessed. A man who would throw out his sick mother to keep his wife happy. "I understand completely, Euphrem," I said, my voice coming out cold and controlled. "I'll begin making arrangements today." Something in my tone made him glance up sharply, his eyes finally meeting mine. Maybe he'd expected protest, tears, guilt, pleading. Instead, he got acceptance that should have terrified him more than anger. I walked to my room, pulled my suitcase from the closet, and began folding clothes with deliberate, methodical movements. Each shirt, each pair of pants, each careful fold was a choice, a decision, a step toward something they couldn't possibly imagine. Through the thin walls, I heard Claire's voice, bright with relief. "She's actually packing." I continued folding, my hands steady, my mind clearer than it had been in 3 years. Around me sat boxes I'd never fully unpacked, as if some part of me had always known this arrangement might be temporary. I just needed to know why it would end. Now I knew, not because I was difficult or demanding or ungrateful, but because I was sick, and sickness was inconvenient, and convenience mattered more than love in this house that I'd helped them buy. I paused midday, sat among half-packed boxes, holding a framed photo from Euphrem's college graduation. The ceremony I'd paid for, the degree I'd funded, the pride I'd felt watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown, believing I'd raised a good man. I set the frame face down in a box and picked up my phone. The private banking app opened to my portfolio, $12,347,612. The number I'd been watching grow for 5 years while pretending to be broke. I opened my real estate search app and typed carefully, Tampa luxury homes, 500,000 plus. The screen filled with properties, waterfront estates, modern mansions, renovated historical gems. Each listing more impressive than this house I'd helped them buy, with my supposed last 50,000. For the first time since last night, a small cold smile crossed my face. They wanted the sick old woman out of their house. They had no idea what house the old woman could afford. I closed on the West Shore house in 5 days flat. 5 days from offer to keys, from secret millionaire to homeowner, from sick old woman in a converted office to the owner of a stunning white stone mansion with a gated driveway and enough square footage to remind my son exactly what kind of fool he'd been. The realtor, Diane Morrison, said it was the fastest cash closing she'd seen in 23 years. That's what happens, I told her, signing the final papers with a hand that didn't shake. When you're motivated and everyone assumes you have nothing to lose. But here's what Diane didn't know, what Ephraim and Claire couldn't possibly imagine. I had everything to lose. My dignity, my self-respect, my final years of independence. They tried to take all of it. Now I was taking something back. Not revenge exactly. More like rebalancing the scales, teaching a lesson that 3 years of careful observation had proven they desperately needed. The moving truck arrived at 8 in the morning on day 6. 2 professional movers, efficient and discreet, the kind who don't ask questions when a woman in her 60s is emptying out a converted office bedroom, while the rest of the house sleeps. I'd timed it perfectly. Ephraim left for work at 7:20, earlier than usual, practically running to his car to avoid facing me. Coward. Claire took the kids to school at 8 sharp, her white SUV backing out of the driveway without a single glance at my window. By 8:15, the house was mine to dismantle, to erase my presence from like I'd never existed at all. "This is a nice place you're moving to, ma'am," the crew leader said, consulting his clipboard with the new address. "Upgrading. You could say that." I kept my voice neutral, giving nothing away. Fresh start. They loaded boxes while I did a final walkthrough, each room a station of my 3-year crucifixion. Ephraim and Claire's bedroom, where I'd stood in the hallway that night listening to my fate being decided through thin walls. The kids' rooms, toys scattered across floors, childhoods I'd miss watching unfold because their mother found my illness inconvenient. The dining room where I'd revealed my diagnosis to faces that couldn't hide their calculation. I felt nothing walking through these spaces. No sentimentality, no regret, just quiet satisfaction that the test was complete, and I had my answer written in Claire's contemptuous words and Ephraim's spineless agreement. In the kitchen, I placed my final gift on the table where they'd find it at breakfast. The envelope with this month's $3,000 in crisp hundreds, my last contribution to their comfortable life. Beside it, I laid the note I'd drafted and redrafted until every word carried exactly the weight I wanted. "Thank you for your hospitality these 3 years. I found new housing and will be out by noon today. Don't trouble yourselves about the sick old woman anymore. The envelope is this month's contribution." Mom, sick old woman, Claire's exact phrase, carefully preserved and thrown back like a grenade with the pin pulled. I wanted her to read those words and feel them detonate. Wanted Ephraim to recognize his wife's venom quoted back in his mother's handwriting. Wanted them both to sit with the discomfort of seeing their cruelty reflected in ink that wouldn't fade. I locked the front door behind me for the last time, dropped the key they'd given me 3 years ago into the mailbox, and followed the moving truck to West Shore. 17 minutes through neighborhoods that reminded me why I'd chosen Tampa 40 years ago, when I was young and hungry, and building something from nothing. Trees, water, possibilities. I'd lost none of that hunger. I'd just hidden it under a performance of neediness that they'd believed because they wanted to believe it, because it made them feel generous, superior, like they were doing something noble by letting their sick mother pay $3,000 a month to sleep in their office. The house looked even better in morning light. White stone gleaming, glass windows reflecting sky, the gate responding to my new remote with smooth mechanical precision. My gate, my driveway, my house. The movers worked fast, and I directed traffic like a general positioning troops. Master bedroom here, home office there, guest room for when Sophia and Emma eventually came to visit. If they came to visit. Within 2 hours, they'd unloaded everything. I tipped them $500 cash and watched their eyebrows rise, but they kept their professionalism intact. Enjoy your new place, ma'am. Oh, I intend to. After they left, I stood in my new living room and felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Space to breathe, high ceilings, natural light flooding through those massive windows, room to exist without making myself small, without monitoring every movement to ensure I wasn't being too much, too loud, too present. My furniture looked small in here, dwarfed by the square footage. But I'd acquire more. Time for that. Time for everything now. I made coffee in my new kitchen, actual counter space, modern appliances, a window overlooking a backyard I owned, and poured it into the first mug I'd unpacked. Walked to what I was already thinking of as my office. Real office, proper lighting, bookshelves waiting to be filled, not a corner of a converted bedroom where I'd kept my secrets hidden behind winter coats and carefully maintained lies. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and waited. My phone buzzed around 4 in the afternoon. Text from Ephraim. Got your note. Hope you're settled okay. Take care of yourself. 9 words. Perfunctory care. Obligation fulfilled. Duty discharged. I stared at the message and remembered the boy who'd once made me Mother's Day cards in crayon, who'd cried when I taught him to ride a bike and he fell hard on his 3rd attempt, who'd hugged me so tight at his college graduation I could barely breathe. That boy was gone. Had been gone for years, probably. I just needed proof. Now I had it, archived in a text message that said everything by saying nothing at all. I didn't respond. Let him wonder. Let him sit with the silence. The week passed in a blur of unpacking, organizing, learning my new neighborhood like a soldier, learning terrain before battle. I walked to the coffee shop 3 blocks away, drove to the grocery store, established routines, started taking my heart medication at the same time every morning, embracing the disciplined lifestyle the cardiologist had recommended. Funny how easy it was to take care of myself when I wasn't expending all my energy managing other people's comfort with my existence. 7 days after moving in, I sat in my home office with my laptop open to my financial portfolio and my phone showing 17 missed calls from Ephraim and Claire. They'd been calling since yesterday, each call more desperate than the last, voicemails piling up like evidence I was carefully preserving. Whatever they wanted could wait until I was ready. This was my timeline now, my terms, my rules. But first, there was someone I needed to call. I scrolled through my contacts and found the name, Patricia Morrison, estate planning attorney. We'd worked together 5 years ago when I sold Walker Commercial Properties, setting up trusts and structures to protect my assets from taxes and predators and family members who might prove unworthy. Time to reestablish that relationship. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. Patricia Morrison. Patricia, this is Margaret Walker. We worked together 5 years ago on estate planning after I sold my business. Mrs. Walker, of course I remember. Her tone shifted, became warmer. How can I help you? I need to update my will. I paused, choosing my words with surgical precision. And I need you to make a phone call to my son, Ephraim Walker. It's time he learned a few things about his mother's finances. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough for Patricia to understand this wasn't routine estate planning, long enough for her to hear the steel beneath my polite request. I see, she said slowly, and I could almost hear her mind working, calculating, understanding. When would you like to meet? Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, your office. I'll clear my calendar. Patricia Morrison's office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise with views of the Hillsborough River, all glass and chrome and expensive furniture that announced success to anyone who walked through the door. I arrived 30 minutes early, reviewed my documents in the lobby coffee shop, then took the elevator up at precisely 9:55. Punctuality matters. Details matter. Everything matters when you're teaching someone a lesson they'll never forget. She looked exactly as I remembered. Mid-50s, silver hair cut efficient and sharp, reading glasses on a chain, handshake firm enough to communicate competence without trying to prove anything. Her office smelled like old paper and expensive furniture polish, the particular scent of power and money that all attorney offices seem to share. "Mrs. Walker," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her mahogany desk. "Good to see you again." I settled in and laid out the documents I'd brought. Investment portfolio statements showing the $12 million. Property deed for the West Shore house. Bank account summaries. Tax records from the business sale 5 years ago. $8 million right there in black and white, plus 5 years of careful growth. Patricia studied each document with the focused attention of a jeweler, examining diamonds. "I want my son to see every statement, every asset, total," I said, keeping my voice level and cold. "I want him to understand exactly what he threw away when he threw me out." Patricia made notes on her legal pad, her pen moving in swift, efficient strokes. "You want maximum impact. I want him to know what $12 million of regret feels like." She looked up, and something like respect flickered in her eyes. "I'll call him today. Schedule a meeting for this week." She paused, pen hovering over paper. "The sooner he knows, the sooner he'll start making mistakes." Mistakes? Desperate people make poor decisions. "Mrs. Walker, if you're planning further action, his panic will work in your favor." Smart woman. That's why I'd kept her number all these years. 3 days later, Euphrem sat in the same chair I'd occupied, staring at documents that were rewriting his understanding of reality in real time. I know because Patricia called me afterward with a full report, her voice carrying the particular satisfaction of someone who'd delivered a devastating blow with professional precision. She'd started neutral, matter of fact. "Mr. Walker, thank you for coming in. I'm handling your mother's estate planning, and she wanted you informed of certain assets." Euphrem had looked confused, Patricia said. "Assets? I mean, Mom sold her business years ago. She lived with us because... I don't understand what..." Patricia slid the first document across her desk like a dealer showing cards. Portfolio statement. My name at the top. The balance clear in bold print. $12,347,612. Your mother owns an investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $12 million. Euphrem stared at the paper. Patricia said his face went blank, like a computer screen freezing mid-task, his brain unable to process information that contradicted everything he thought he knew. 12? I'm sorry. What? She showed him more. Property deed for the West Shore house, bank statements, tax records from the business sale 5 years ago. $8 million right there, plus growth, plus the house, plus everything else I'd carefully accumulated while playing poor in his converted office. "But she was living with us," Euphrem's voice came out hoarse, strangled. "She gave us money every month. She needed help. She said..." "Your mother mentioned those contributions," Patricia interrupted smoothly. $3,000 monthly, correct? "Yes, because she couldn't afford..." The words died as logic caught up with emotion, as mathematics collided with assumption. 3,000 from 12 million. Pennies from a fortune. Charity from someone who needed no charity at all. Patricia delivered the final blow with the detachment of a surgeon, making a necessary cut. "Mr. Walker, your mother sold her commercial real estate business 5 years ago for $8 million. She invested wisely. She has never needed financial assistance. Those monthly contributions were her choice, not her necessity." She paused. Let that sink in like poison. "Previously, you were designated as sole beneficiary of your mother's estate. She wanted you to know she's now reconsidering that arrangement. She'll contact you when she's ready to discuss it further." Euphrem left her office moving like a sleepwalker, Patricia said, like a man who'd just discovered the ground beneath his feet was actually water, and he'd been drowning slowly for 3 years without knowing it. She watched from her window as he made it to his car in the parking garage, sat in his sedan, and called Claire. Even from 15 floors up, she could see his stillness, the particular frozen quality of someone whose world was ending in real time. The call, according to Euphrem's later frantic voicemail to me, went like this. Jenny, you need to sit down. Mom, she has $12 million. $12 million? What? That's impossible. She lived in our house. She gave us money because she was testing us, Jenny. All those years. The $3,000 a month. She could have bought our house with cash, could have bought 10 houses like ours. Silence on her end. Then, Patricia reported later through her network of contacts, Claire's voice thin and sharp as a wire. Oh no! Oh God, Euphrem! What did we do? What they did was try to call me 17 times in the next hour. I sat in my home office, Tampa Bay sparkling outside my window, and watched my phone light up with each attempt. Didn't answer, didn't even consider answering. Text messages poured in like water through a broken dam. Euphrem. Mom, please call me. We need to talk. Euphrem. I just met with Patricia. I had no idea about your finances. Please let me explain. Claire. Margaret, the kids miss you. Please come for dinner. We can work this out. Euphrem. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. Please just talk to me. I deleted each one without responding, watching them disappear like they'd never existed, like their words carried no more weight than smoke. That evening, I poured myself a bourbon, doctor approved, 1 glass daily, and sat on my back patio. The April air carried jasmine from somewhere, warm and pleasant. My house, my yard, my peace, my choices, my consequences for them to live with. 3 days passed. My phone showed 42 missed calls. I changed my number but kept the old phone active just to monitor their desperation, to watch it grow like a cancer spreading through their comfortable life. They found me on the 4th day. I was reading in my living room when I saw Claire's white SUV crawl past my house, slow like a shark circling prey, then circle back, then stop across the street. Through my window, I watched them sit in their car, staring at my property. The modern white stone they'd never imagined I could afford. The gated driveway they couldn't access without the code I'd never give them. The manicured lawn and professional landscaping that spoke of money they'd assumed I didn't have. Money they'd believed didn't exist. Money that made their little craftsman house look like exactly what it was. Starter home for people playing at success. Euphrem emerged first, then Claire. They stood on the sidewalk looking at my house like it was a mirage, like if they blinked hard enough it would disappear and I'd be back in their converted office where I belonged, small and manageable and grateful. I buttoned my collar, checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked rested, healthy, years younger than I'd appeared during those 3 years of living under their contempt. Funny how dignity restores youth better than any expensive cream Claire bought. The doorbell rang. I let them wait 30 seconds, counting silently, then walked to my front door and opened it. Didn't open the gate, just stood in my doorway, separated from them by wrought iron and 3 years of accumulated betrayal. Hi, Mom. Euphrem's voice cracked like ice breaking. We've been trying to reach you. I said nothing, just looked at them. Watched Claire's carefully composed expression, saw the tears she'd probably practiced in the car, noted how they stood close together like children facing punishment. Margaret, please. Claire stepped forward, her voice quavering with rehearsed emotion. We've been so worried. The children ask about you constantly. She paused, took a breath, delivered her line. That night, when things were said, when I said things I was stressed, I didn't mean them. You know I love you. And there it was, the lie I'd been waiting to hear. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until they shifted their weight, until Claire's mask started to slip. I know exactly what you meant, I said, my voice flat as Kansas. I heard every word. Her face went pale. You heard? Get that sick old woman out of my house, I quoted precisely, watching her flinch with each word. I don't want her around my children. She's dragging us down. Those were your exact words, Claire. I stood in the hallway that night and heard you say them through your bedroom wall. Ephraim held up his hands like a traffic cop stopping cars. Mom, can we just talk? Inside? Like family? Family? I let the word hang there between us, heavy as an anchor. You gave me 1 week to leave, Ephraim. I took 3 days, efficient, like always. I turned my gaze to Claire. The sick old woman found her own housing, away from your children, away from your life, exactly what you wanted. Claire's tears dried up fast when she realized they weren't working, when she understood I'd been vaccinated against her manipulation by 3 years of careful observation. Her voice shifted, became sharp, showed the real Claire beneath the yoga calm. Fine. We made mistakes. We're human. But you lied to us, Margaret. Pretended you were broke. Took our money. I gave you money, I interrupted, my voice cold enough to freeze fire. $3,000 monthly for 3 years, $108,000 total. You think I needed your roof over my head? I paused. Let mathematics work on their faces. I was testing you, wanted to see if you loved your mother or just her wallet. Congratulations, you failed. That's not fair. Ephraim stepped closer to the gate, his voice rising. We helped you when you had nowhere. When I had nowhere else to go? I finished for him. Is that the story you're telling yourselves? I had $12 million, Ephraim. I could have stayed in a 5-star hotel for the rest of my life. I could have bought a mansion and hired staff. I chose your house because I wanted to know who you really were. I let that sink in like a knife between ribs. So here I am, out of your house, away from your children. The sick old woman you wanted gone. Except I took $12 million with me. Funny how that works. Claire reached through the gate bars toward my arm. I stepped back, the small movement carrying more weight than words. No more presumed intimacy. No more access to my space, my life, my dignity. The kids, she tried, voice desperate now. Margaret, the kids are innocent. They miss their grandmother. The kids are innocent, I agreed, which is why this is between us, not them. When they're old enough to understand, I'll explain why their grandmother stopped visiting. Until then, you're welcome to tell them whatever story makes you comfortable. I turned toward my door, done with this conversation, done with their desperation, done with everything they represented. Mom, wait, Ephraim's voice broke. Whatever Patricia told you, whatever you think, she told me nothing about you sign, I said without turning around. I lived in your house for 3 years. I saw who you really are. I heard what your wife said about me. I watched you agree to throw out your sick mother to keep your wife happy. That's enough. I stepped inside. That's more than enough. The door closed behind me with a solid final sound. Through the window, I watched them stand at my gate for 5 more minutes. Claire gestured angrily, probably saying things about me I no longer cared about. Ephraim slumped, his shoulders carrying the weight of consequences he'd never imagined. Eventually, they returned to their car and drove away, and I poured another bourbon. My hands were steady. 2 days later, Claire sat in a different attorney's office across town, this one specializing in family law and inheritance disputes. The attorney, Martin Fletcher, listened to her story with the practiced patience of someone who'd heard every variation of family greed disguised as concern. So you want to know if you can contest her will? Fletcher scrolled through notes on his tablet, his expression professionally neutral. She's making decisions out of spite. Claire leaned forward, her voice tight. My husband is her son. He has rights to that estate. Blood rights. Fletcher set down his tablet and folded his hands, and I imagine his expression carried the particular exhaustion of someone explaining basic law to people who don't want to hear it. Ma'am, in Florida, a competent adult can distribute their estate however they choose, unless you can prove mental incompetence or undue influence, which clearly doesn't apply here given what you've told me. You have no grounds for challenge. But Ephraim is family. Blood. That should count for something. Legally it doesn't. Morally maybe, but morality doesn't win in probate court. He paused. Is your mother-in-law of sound mind? Claire hesitated, and in that hesitation was her answer. She's very sharp, actually. Just bought a house, handled all the paperwork herself, but then you're out of options, Fletcher interrupted, at least while she's alive. He opened his tablet again, already moving to close this consultation. My advice? Try to reconcile personally, but legally, you have no leverage. She controls her assets while living. You can't force her to include you in her will. You can't claim elder abuse or exploitation when she moved out voluntarily, maintained her independence, clearly made her own decisions. The consultation cost Claire $300 and gave her exactly zero hope. She left that office with less than she'd arrived with, which seemed appropriate somehow, poetic even. At home, she and Claire spent hours researching online, desperately searching for loopholes that didn't exist. Florida filial responsibility laws? None. Elder financial abuse statutes required proof of coercion they didn't have. Inheritance rights for children. Zero, unless specified in the will. Every door was locked. Every window sealed, every escape route blocked by the simple fact that I was competent, independent, and absolutely done with their manipulation. But I wasn't done teaching. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened a file I'd kept for 3 years, a yellowed document, slightly creased from storage, with Euphraium's signature bold and clear at the bottom. Promissory note, dated exactly 3 years ago, the day I'd moved into their house, the day I'd written them a check for $50,000 they called a gift, except the paperwork Euphraium had signed without reading told a different story. Legal loan, binding contract, all properly notarized. I called Patricia. I need you to look at something, I said. A promissory note from 3 years ago. What's the principal amount? $50,000 for their down payment. Another $100,000 for renovations, kitchen, master bath, landscaping. They wanted it all. I said yes. I paused. I also made them sign paperwork they didn't bother to read. Patricia's laugh was sharp and approving. Total amount? $150,000 principal, 5% annual interest, 5-year term. There's an acceleration clause, if I choose to invoke it. What's the total with interest if you invoke the clause? $173,600, give or take. When do you want to invoke it? I looked out my window at Tampa Bay, at the water catching sunset light, at the life I'd built while they assumed I had nothing. Tomorrow, I said. Send the demand letter tomorrow. 90 days to pay in full or face foreclosure proceedings. They won't be able to pay it, Patricia said quietly. Not that amount on short notice. You know that. I know. I felt no guilt, no hesitation, just cold satisfaction that justice had mathematics on its side. That's the point. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I imagine Euphraium's hands were already shaking before he even opened the envelope. He signed for it at the front door, saw Patricia Morrison's law office in the return address, and probably felt his stomach drop because deep down some part of him knew this wasn't over, that I wasn't the type of woman to simply disappear quietly into my mansion while they went on with their lives like nothing had happened. Inside that envelope was formal legal letterhead, clean and professional, and absolutely devastating. Dear Mr. Walker, pursuant to the acceleration clause in the promissory note dated April 15th, 2022, the full amount of $173,600, consisting of principal of $150,000 and accrued interest and fees, is now due within 90 days of this notice. Patricia told me later that he read it 3 times, that the words didn't change no matter how many times his eyes traveled over them, no matter how desperately his brain tried to find some other interpretation, some escape clause hidden in the legal language. Attached was a copy of the promissory note with his signature at the bottom, bold and confident from 3 years ago, when he was so eager for that house, so grateful for his mother's help, so certain he was signing meaningless paperwork because you trust your mother, don't you? You trust family. Claire found him sitting at their dining table with the letter spread before him like evidence at a crime scene. "What is it?" she asked, and he handed her the document without speaking, just watched her face cycle through the same emotions his had, Confusion, disbelief, recognition, terror. $173,000? Her voice came out thin and high. Ephraim, we don't have that kind of money. I know. In 90 days? I know. She stared at the promissory note, at his signature in black ink that might as well have been blood. You signed a legal contract without reading it? Her voice was rising now, panic sharpening into anger, because that's easier than fear, isn't it? Easier to be angry than terrified. What kind of person signs something without reading it? The kind who trusted his mother, Ephraim said quietly. The kind whose wife was screaming at him to throw that mother out. The words hit like slaps. They stared at each other across the table, and I imagined the space between them suddenly felt vast, a chasm opening up that 3 years of comfortable marriage couldn't bridge. This was what consequence looked like. This was what happened when cruelty met mathematics and lost. Ephraim pulled out his laptop and started calculating their escape routes, each one closing before it opened. Their savings, $25,000. His annual salary, $85,000. Claire's part-time income, $30,000. Combined $115,000 yearly, maybe $95,000 after taxes. They needed $173,000 in 90 days. The math didn't work. The math would never work. We can get a home equity loan, Claire said, grasping at solutions like a drowning person grasping at water. Use the house as collateral. They scheduled an appointment with their bank the next morning. The loan officer, a pleasant woman named Sandra, who'd probably delivered bad news 1,000 times in her career, reviewed their application with decreasing enthusiasm. She pulled up their property records and frowned in that particular way. That means you're about to hear something you don't want to hear. Mr. Walker, I see there's already a lien on your property for $150,000. Until that's satisfied, we cannot approve additional lending. But the house is worth $400,000, Ephraim said, his voice carrying desperation like a flag. We have equity. We have... Not if you don't own it outright, Sandra interrupted gently. This lien takes priority. It's a legal claim on the property. Have you considered... She paused, and I imagined she hated what she was about to suggest. Have you considered selling the home? The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire consuming everything they'd built. This is our home, Ephraim said quietly, our children's home. Sandra's expression softened with professional sympathy, the kind that doesn't actually help, but acknowledges that yes, the situation is terrible, and no, there's nothing she can do about it. I understand, but legally our hands are tied. 3 more banks gave identical answers. The lien blocked everything. The house they thought they owned was actually mine until they paid what they owed, and they couldn't pay what they owed because the house was mine. Beautiful circular logic, perfect trap, almost poetic in its completeness. Jennifer started selling possessions that weekend, and I heard about it through my network because Tampa's a small town when you know the right people. Designer handbags on Facebook Marketplace, 40% off retail because she needed cash fast, and everyone loves a desperate seller. Jewelry on Poshmark, furniture on Craigslist. Each sale must have felt like peeling off skin, like dismantling the life she'd so carefully curated for her Instagram followers who were disappearing faster than her possessions. Ephraim's poker table from his bachelor days. The one he'd told me cost $2,000 and was a investment in networking, gone for $800. Claire's Peloton bike, $1,200. Their guest bedroom furniture set, $900 for everything. Neighbors started noticing, started asking questions that Claire couldn't answer without admitting the truth. They were being crushed under the weight of their own cruelty. But here's what I want you to think about. How far would you go to teach someone a lesson? How much pressure would you apply before mercy became more important than justice? Because I was about to find out my own limits. 2 weeks passed. They'd accumulated $18,000 from sales, which brought their total to $43,000 when combined with savings. Still needed $130,000 more. Ephraim brought lunch from home every day, which his coworkers noticed because he'd always been the guy who ordered in. who suggested expensive restaurants for client meetings, who spent money like someone who'd never had to worry about it. Claire clipped coupons for the first time in a decade, canceled streaming services, her gym membership, the lawn service, small degradations that felt enormous because they represented not just financial pressure but social death. The story was spreading through Tampa's interconnected social circles like wildfire. It started at a charity luncheon in Hyde Park, where someone in Patricia's network, carefully instructed by me, mentioned it casually to the right person. How Claire Walker had kicked out her sick mother-in-law, how Margaret turned out to be worth $12 million. How they'd taken her money for years, then thrown her out when she became inconvenient. The story had everything a good piece of gossip needs: cruelty, irony, poetic justice. By the end of lunch, 20 women knew. By the end of the week, everyone in South Tampa's social circle had heard some version. Claire's Instagram followers hemorrhaged. 15,000 down to 8,000 in 10 days, and the comments on her old posts turned vicious in that particular way that only social media can achieve. "How's your mother-in-law doing?" someone asked under a photo of Claire's perfect living room. "Karma is real," another commented on a post about family values. "Some people don't deserve nice things, Bao," said a third, and that one probably stung the most because it was true. She posted a vague apology. Trying to control the narrative. "We're going through difficult family matters. Please respect our privacy during this time." It made everything worse. Someone screenshotted it and posted it to a local mom group with the caption, "Now she cares about family." And the pile-on was immediate and merciless. The internet never forgets, and it definitely doesn't forgive. The school pickup line became torture. Other mothers stared, whispered, formed little clusters that dissolved when Claire approached. One of them, Karen Martinez, who'd been friendly for years, approached Claire directly. "Is it true you threw out your husband's mother when she was sick?" she asked, loud enough for others to hear. Claire's face burned. It's complicated. Family situations are private." "Not anymore, apparently," Karen said, and walked away. Sophia came home crying that afternoon. "Sophie's mom says we can't have playdates anymore. Why, Mommy? What did I do wrong?" And there it was, the collateral damage I'd worried about, the children suffering for their parents' sins. 8 weeks into the 90-day deadline, they'd scraped together $68,000 total. Still, $105,000 short. Bankruptcy stopped being a distant possibility and became something they researched late at night, looking at the requirements, the consequences, the complete destruction of the financial life they'd built. Euphrem's workplace turned hostile in subtle ways. His manager called him in for a meeting, professional and concerned in that way. That means you're about to be documented. "Euphrem, we've noticed some performance issues, late submissions, missed meetings. Your personal life is your own, but we need to ensure it's not impacting your work. It won't happen again," Euphrem said, his voice hollow. "This is a formal warning. Documentation for your file. See that it doesn't." First professional consequence, written in permanent ink, following him forever. But then something happened that I didn't expect. Something that made me question whether I'd gone too far or if I'd gone exactly far enough. My phone rang at 8:30 on a Thursday evening. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Grandma Margaret?" Sophia's voice, small and afraid, cut through my armor like nothing else could. "Sweetheart, how did you get this number?" I kept my voice steady, but my heart was racing. "From a card in Daddy's office. A lady's card with numbers on it. Patricia's business card. Smart girl. Too smart for her own good sometimes. Grandma, why don't you visit anymore? Did we do something wrong?" The question pierced something I'd been keeping carefully armored, some soft place I'd protected by telling myself this was just about Euphrem and Claire, not about the children who were innocent in all this. "No, honey, you didn't do anything wrong." "Kids at school say mean things about Mommy and Daddy. I don't understand what happened. Emma cries at night. She thinks you don't love us anymore." Her voice cracked, and I heard 8 years of confusion and pain in that crack. Sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Your parents and I are working through some things. It's not your fault, and it's not your brother's fault. Do you understand? I think so. She didn't sound convinced. I miss you, Grandma, so much. I miss you too, sweetheart, so very much. After she hung up, I sat in my office for 20 minutes staring at nothing, feeling the weight of what I'd done settle on my shoulders in a way it hadn't before. The children were suffering. Sophia and Emma, who'd done nothing wrong, who loved their grandmother unconditionally, who didn't understand why their world was collapsing around them. I picked up my phone and called Patricia. I got a call from Sophia tonight, I said without preamble. The children are always the hard part, Patricia said quietly, and I could hear understanding in her voice. They always are. Am I going too far? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Patricia was silent for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Your son threw you out when you were sick. He chose his wife's cruelty over your dignity. The children are suffering, yes, but their parents created this situation, not you. You're teaching a lesson that needs teaching. She paused. Sophia and Emma are 6 and 8. They'll recover. Children are resilient in ways adults aren't. But if you stop now, if you let Ephraim and Claire off without real consequences, what lesson does that teach? That cruelty has no cost. That family means nothing. That money excuses everything. I knew she was right. Didn't make it easier, but truth rarely does. The grandchildren aren't permanently cut off, I said, more to myself than to her. This isn't forever, just until their parents understand what they did. Exactly. You're establishing boundaries, not abandoning family. There's a difference. I spent that night drafting something I'd never planned to draft. Terms of reconciliation, not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. A way back that required genuine change, not just apologetic words designed to access money they thought they deserved. By 3 a.m, I had it finished. 5 conditions, non-negotiable, that would separate the truly remorseful from the merely desperate. 6 weeks into the deadline, Ephraim and Claire had assembled $68,000 through sales, maxed credit cards, and a $15,000 loan from Claire's parents that had come with judgment and disappointment. Claire's mother had actually said, "How could you treat Ephraim's mother that way?" Which must have felt like a knife between the ribs, because even her own mother saw the cruelty clearly. They sat together in Claire's home office one night, the converted bedroom I used to sleep in, and drafted a letter. Ephraim typed while Claire wept, and they worked on it for hours, deleting and rewriting until they'd stripped away all the justifications and excuses and gotten down to raw truth. They sent it via email because they didn't have my home address, only Patricia's office contact. The email arrived at 2:17 in the morning. I was awake, sitting in my office with Tampa Bay dark outside my windows, and I read it twice before responding. "Dear Mom," it began, and I could see Ephraim's voice in the words. "I don't have words that can fix what I've done. You raised me, sacrificed for me, paid for everything I ever needed. And when you got sick, when you actually needed support, I threw you away. I failed you. I failed as a son. I'm sorry." Simple, direct, no excuses. That was something, at least. Claire's edition was shorter but somehow more honest. "Margaret, I said terrible things, called you a sick old woman dragging us down, wanted you out of my house, away from my children. But you weren't dragging us down. We were. We're selfish, ungrateful people who didn't deserve you. I can't take back those words. I can only tell you I understand now what we threw away. Not the money. You. And I'm sorrier than words can express." I sat with that email for 3 days before responding. 3 days of thinking about Sophia's phone call, about Emma crying at night, about whether justice required complete destruction or if there was another way. Finally, I called Patricia and arranged a meeting. Neutral location, next week. "Terms?" Patricia asked. I told her what I'd drafted. She made notes, asked clarifying questions, then said something that surprised me. "This is fair. firm but fair. It leaves room for redemption without letting them off easy. That's what I'm hoping for. The coffee shop overlooked old Tampa Bay, floor-to-ceiling windows catching afternoon light off water that sparkled like scattered diamonds. I'd chosen it deliberately. Neutral ground, public enough to keep emotions controlled, elegant enough to remind them what wealth could buy and what poverty would cost. Ephraim and Claire arrived 15 minutes early. I watched from my car as they took a table by the windows, ordered nothing, sat rigid and terrified, waiting for judgment. When I walked in at exactly 3 o'clock, they barely recognized me. I'd gained back weight I'd lost living under their roof. My clothes fit properly: tailored slacks, silk blouse, cashmere cardigan, expensive but understated. I looked successful, healthy, confident, everything the sick old woman wasn't supposed to be. I ordered coffee at the counter, paid with a card that didn't decline, carried it to their table with steady hands. "Mom," Ephraim's voice broke on that single syllable. I sat down, said nothing, let them feel the silence pressing down like atmosphere at the bottom of the ocean. Ephraim started first, his voice shaking but honest. "I don't have words that can fix what I've done. You raised me, sacrificed for me. And when you got sick, I failed you. Completely. I'm sorry." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I'm so deeply sorry." Claire followed, tears streaming but voice steady. "Margaret, I said terrible things. Called you a sick old woman. Wanted you away from my children. But we're the sick ones. We're the ones who need to change." She wiped her eyes. "I can't undo what I said. I can only promise to become someone who would never say those things again." I sipped my coffee, let the silence build, then asked the question I'd been planning for weeks. "Are you apologizing because I'm a millionaire? Or because what you did was wrong?" The silence felt solid enough to touch. Claire answered first, brutal in her honesty. "Both. I wish I could say it's only the second, but I'd be lying. Losing the money made us realize what we lost in you. That makes us horrible people, doesn't it?" The honesty surprised me. Brutal self-awareness forced by desperation, maybe, but honest nonetheless. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it on the table. Inside were printouts, the promissory note with Ephraim's signature, their desperate text messages, screenshots documenting their social media collapse, everything. "You've collected $68,000 in 6 weeks," I said. "Patricia keeps me informed. Sold your jewelry, your furniture, maxed out credit cards borrowed from Claire's parents." I paused. "You've lived with debt collectors calling, neighbors judging, friends abandoning you. You've experienced a fraction of what you were willing to do to me." They nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I slid a typed document across the table. "These are my terms, non-negotiable. Accept them or face foreclosure and bankruptcy." They leaned forward, reading together. I watched their faces as they processed each condition. 1. Keep the $68,000 you've collected and pay it to me. Consider it tuition for the lesson you've learned. 2. I forgive the remaining $105,000. The debt ends there. 3. Attend mandatory family therapy, weekly, for at least 6 months. Bring receipts. 4. My will stays changed. The bulk of my estate goes to charity and a trust fund for Sophia and Emma. You receive $100,000 total after my death, combined, not each. 5. Publicly acknowledge your mistakes to our extended family. No social media, no public spectacle, just honesty with the people who matter. Ephraim read it twice. And if we refuse, I pursue the full debt through court. You lose the house. Declare bankruptcy. Start over with nothing. I kept my voice level. Your choice. 48 hours to decide. Claire reached across the table toward my hand. I let her touch it for a moment, warm, trembling, desperate, then gently withdrew. Boundaries, not cruelty. "Can I ask something?" Ephraim's voice was small. "Will you ever forgive us? Really forgive us?" I considered this carefully. "I'm giving you something you didn't give me, a choice. Accept these terms. Rebuild your lives with what you have left. Learn from this. Maybe someday we'll rebuild trust, but trust is earned, not demanded. I stood to leave, then paused. And Ephraim? I want to see my granddaughters. Regular supervised visits starting next week. They're innocent in this, and I miss them terribly. His face crumpled with relief. Yes, absolutely. Anytime you want. 2 days later, my phone rang. Ephraim's voice came through steady and clear. Mom, we accept your terms, all of them. The paperwork was ready the next day. Patricia handled everything with her usual efficiency. Debt forgiveness agreement, therapy commitment forms, family meeting arrangements. It's done, she told me that evening. Justice served. I looked out my window at Tampa Bay, water catching sunset gold. Justice served. Now comes the harder part, seeing if they actually change. 3 weeks later, I met Sophia and Emma at a coffee shop near their school. Public location, supervised visit, structured. My terms. They were nervous at first, unsure how to act around the grandmother who disappeared from their lives. Then Emma, my 6-year-old with the big heart, asked the question that mattered most. Grandma, are we allowed to love you again? I knelt to her eye level, feeling my 63-year-old knees protest but not caring. You never stopped being allowed to love me, sweetheart, and I never stopped loving you. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and need time to fix them. Your parents are working on fixing theirs. Sophia, 8 and perceptive, studied my face with those sharp eyes. Are you still mad at them? I'm disappointed, I said carefully, but I'm watching to see if they change. Actions matter more than words, and words are easy. Time will tell. We ordered pancakes and hot chocolate, talked about school, friends, summer plans, normal grandmother things. When Ephraim and Claire picked them up, they stayed by their car, respecting boundaries, giving me space, progress, small but real. The gathering happened at my cousin Rita's house in mid-June. 15 people, extended family, a few close friends who'd known us for decades. Ephraim and Claire stood in Rita's living room and told the truth. No excuses, no justifications, just admission of cruelty and a promise to change. I watched from across the room as they spoke, and when they finished, I stood. I accept your apology, I said, and I believe in second chances, but I also believe in consequences. Our relationship will be different now. There are boundaries that didn't exist before, but there's also possibility if you continue to show through actions, not words, but actions, that you've truly learned from this. By August, my life had settled into something peaceful. I volunteered with a nonprofit downtown, mentoring young entrepreneurs who reminded me of my younger self, hungry, driven, building something from nothing. Tuesday and Thursday sessions gave me purpose beyond the family drama. Saturday mornings belonged to Sophia and Emma, our standing pancake date, rebuilding our relationship one chocolate chip at a time. Patricia called one evening in early September. The therapist reached out. She says they're making real progress, working on communication, addressing the materialism that drove their choices. Claire deleted all her social media voluntarily. They're rebuilding their lives more carefully this time. Good, I said, and meant it. Do you regret how hard you were on them? Patricia asked. I thought about this carefully, looking out at Tampa Bay catching sunset light. No, justice isn't cruelty. It's consequence meeting action. They wanted the sick old woman gone. They got their wish. They also got the lesson that came with it. Now we all get to live with what we've learned. That evening, I sat at my desk looking at 2 photographs side by side. One showed Ephraim at age 7, riding on my shoulders at the beach, laughing at something I'd said, bright and innocent and trusting. The other was from last Saturday, Sophia and Emma grinning over pancakes, chocolate chips dotting their smiles. Between the photos lay the signed trust fund documents, $2 million set aside for my granddaughters, accessible when they turn 25, protected from their parents' mistakes. The past, the future, and the protection I'd built between them. I closed the folder and turned to my window. The sun was setting over Tampa Bay, painting everything gold and orange and beautiful. Tomorrow I was meeting with a young woman who'd just opened a bakery and needed business mentoring. Next Saturday, the grandchildren again. My calendar had structure, purpose, meaning, all on my terms. I didn't need Euphrem and Claire's approval anymore. Didn't need their inheritance hopes hanging over me like a sword. Didn't need to be who they wanted me to be. For 3 years I'd lived in that small converted office testing whether they loved me or my money. The test concluded. They failed, but failure taught them what success never could have. My son knows now what it means to lose everything. My daughter-in-law understands the weight of cruel words and their consequences, and I remember who I am, not the sick old woman they wanted gone, but the woman who built something from nothing, who survived their betrayal, who chose justice over revenge, who made them earn their way back instead of just forgiving because that's what mothers are supposed to do. That woman is home now, finally, completely home. So here's what I want you to do. Think about the relationships in your own life. Think about the people who've taken you for granted, who've loved your utility more than your humanity. What would you do if you had the power to teach them a lesson? Would you destroy them, or would you give them a chance to change? Drop your answer in the comments below, because I read every single one, and your stories matter to me. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something real, hit that like button and subscribe, because there are more stories like this coming. Stories about justice, betrayal, and the complicated, messy business of being human. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been taken for granted, someone who deserves to know they're worth more than how they're being treated. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's teaching someone exactly what they lost when they chose cruelty over love. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and they're very willing to change, you get to watch them become the people they should have been all along. That's justice. That's family. That's life. Now go live yours with dignity.